Steve Austin.
Chapter 12. The First Communion. It is Saturday, the 23rd day of Dharma, 10 o'clock in the evening, and Shanaeah is preparing to leave for the wood of Boniscus and her first power commune. Shanaeah heaved a bit of a sigh as she donned the ceremonial robe she was to wear to her first commune. Floor-length, black with white trim, and secured with but a tie at the neck and the waist, the robe was designed to absorb light and allow the natural energy of the elements to readily pass through. She was just as frightened as she was excited about what was to transpire in 2 short hours in the wood of Boniscus. Her mother and Auntie Deneen had selected the location Renata usually used to have her monthly communion with the elements. The small clearing about 1.5 miles into the wood at a bend in Spider Silk Creek was an ideal spot. At that point, the creek was nearly as wide as a small river, supplying one of the 4 elements the commune required. Soldiers from the Boniscan Guard were already there building the bonfire, which would supply another of the elements. They would leave the site once Shanaeah had arrived and the fire was started. They were ordered by Autacum to form a perimeter around the site of the commune to assure Shanaeah's safety as she partook of nature. Shanaeah knew it was pointless to mention it, but she voiced her desire to the other 2 lady sprites.
I really wish Dar could come with us. Just knowing he was close by would be a relief to me.
But Renata's answer was exactly what Shanaeah expected.
Darling, we've already explained why he must not. As protective as he is of you, and with us not knowing what will transpire during the first communion of the Foretold, we fear we would not be able to keep him at a proper distance, so as not to interfere should he hear you distressed.
Couldn't you just put a holding spell on him?
Deneen answered her.
I'm sorry, but no, dearie. Any magic worked in proximity might diminish the effect of your commune. It is of the utmost importance that this commune goes as perfectly as it possibly can. This will be your final preparation for whatever task the prophecy holds for you. We must do all we can to assure the conditions are as unadulterated as are sprightly possible.
It will all be fine, Nea. I'll be here waiting for you when you return. Just don't let the elements rob you of that sarcastic, smart-assed attitude you so skillfully command.
Well, hopefully this ritual will instill in me the ability to construct yet more whimsical insults to hurl at you upon my return. You filthy little troll fart, though I certainly wish you could come with me. But I suppose knowing you will wait up for me will have to suffice.
A knock came upon the door, and when told to come in, Lieutenant Ranneman entered.
Milady, the escort is assembled. We can leave as soon as you are ready.
Very well. Await us at the palace gate. We shall be down shortly.
Yes, milady.
Well, Dar, I suppose I shall see you again in the wee hours of the morning. As Mother says, power commune can last up to 4 or 5 hours. So come and hug me, you little stain.
You'll do fine, Nea. Just don't come back all stuck up looking down your nose at us poor commoners.
And Darkinum reached for Shanaeah and embraced her tightly.
I love you, you...
I know, sweetheart. I love you too. Now get going or you'll still be in the woods come sunup.
She broke the embrace, rose, and she, her aunt, and her mother strode solemnly through the door as they escorted Shanaeah out to meet her destiny. Kirena looked into Carnata's big brown eyes and said,
Relax, sweetheart. I think Lord Autacum was more than fair with us. I mean, you must understand that the entirety of Aeros is on the brink of war with the Panetesians and ogres, and suddenly, out of the blue, a witch shows up on the doorstep on the day of the council. Would you not be suspicious? I imagine there are rulers out there who would have at least put me in the dungeon under those circumstances, if not both of us. Yet Autacum was kind and just, as Shanaeah said he would be. Palace arrest is a much, much lighter sentence than being tossed in the dungeon and forgotten. 2 adjoining suites and free roam of the palace. We can even leave the grounds under guard. And I feel very safe from Minerva and her horde here. I think we came out smelling quite sweet in the end, my darling.
Yes, I suppose you are right. But I still fear what our fate might be should they discover our true identities. No ruler, regardless of how fair and just, enjoys being deceived. And there is still Jerome to consider. Even if he is not here at the moment, I do not doubt he will return at some point. Should he expose us?
Should he expose us, we shall deal with that if and when it occurs. And I have considered confessing everything. To Shanaeah, most likely. She would understand my fear better than her father, having suffered cruelly at Minerva's hand herself.
Don't be hasty, my dear.
No, I shan't. I want to get to know Shanaeah a bit better to make sure she will guarantee our safety. I feel that she will, but I want to be certain, well, as certain as one can be.
I would deem that wise. But if all else fails, you do have information that can be a huge bargaining chip.
Indeed, and should it come to that, I will use it as such. But I hope this all works out, that I might surrender that information voluntarily, at the proper time, of course.
Oh, I agree. But we must be prepared for any scenario which might arise.
Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, so the old adage goes. But all in all, I think the fickle hand of fate dealt us a winning hand. We never really considered Boniscus until the ogres attacked us. Yet I feel much safer here under the watchful eye of Lord Oddicombe and his magnificent daughter than I would have in Morganton at the Jolly Oxen. Don't you agree that circumstance has perhaps placed us in the best possible situation?
Can't argue. Had we proceeded eastward, we may well have ended up boarding a ship and leaving Aeros altogether before all was said and done. Here we do have a chance to stay put and ride this out in safety. Yes, sweet man. Kyrena, fate has been kind to us. So far, I hope it continues to be as such.
The small party of sprites and half-breeds arrived at the clearing next to Spider Silk Creek at around 11:45 in the evening. The bonfire was already burning bright and hot, with enough fuel to last for hours. Shanaeah walked alongside her mother, Renata, and her auntie Danine. Behind them was Sasha and Celine, the sprites Danine had brought with her from Tenella. Following closely behind them was Lieutenant Ranamon, accompanied by 10 members of the Beniscan Guard. Shanaeah walked past the bonfire and stood on the bank of the creek. As she stood trying to clear her mind in preparedness for the ritual about to transpire, an adorable little female tree imp fluttered across the stream and hovered in front of her face.
Hello, Shanaeah, hello. Hello, Shanaeah. I'm Tay-Tay, I'm Tay-Tay, I'm Tay-Tay. Hello.
Shit.
Shanaeah thought to herself,
One of these annoying little flutterbugs. I hope she is not involved with this.
a digression here to talk about Tay-Tay and the tree imps just a bit. Tree imps are a semi-sentient species which inhabit the forests of Aeros. Half insect, half fairy, they repeat themselves frequently when they speak and flutter back and forth as they do. They stand about 8 inches tall, have beautiful green and purple wings like that of a luna moth, and have short, comb-like antennae. Aside from the wings, antennae, and semi-compound eyes, their faces and bodies are quite humanoid in appearance, in miniature of course. They are strict herbivores, yet they will bite if they feel threatened. No one is really certain about the length of their lifespans, but Renata and Danine have known Tay-Tay for about 75 years, and she shows no sign of age. Their society is, as most insect societies are, matriarchal, and Tay-Tay is the matron of the forest of Boniscus. The tree imp's magic is very basic and centers on establishing harmony within the inherent. Each imp carries a small wooden staff or wand, comprised of 3 twigs about 2 inches long, tied together with blades of field grass. This wand is used to direct their mage. Tree imps, both male and female, are incredibly cute to look upon. Purposefully harming a tree imp is said to bring bad karma upon the being guilty of doing so. Since Shanaeah refrained from answering, Renata answered in her stead.
Hello, Tay-Tay. Thank you so much for being here for Shanaeah's first commune.
My pleasure, Renata. I've looked forward to this day for some time. My people are so excited as well, also too. Yes, Shanaeah is indeed as pretty as you said, yes.
Shanaeah thought to herself yet again.
Hail the inherent. I still fail to see what Mother and Auntie Danine see in these little bugs. My neck is beginning to ache trying to follow her fluttering as she speaks. I think I shall pick a fixed point central of her flight pattern and stare into it. Damn. Just damn.
Renata asked.
Is everything in preparedness?
All is ready, Renata. We are here to serve.
Thank you, Tay-Tay. You have been well beyond hospitable. Darling, it is time. Fear not. You will emerge unscathed and a better sprite once the ritual is over. Sasha, Celine, step up, please. Shanaeah, pat their pretty bottoms for luck as you partake in this, what may prove the most profound endeavor thus far in your young life.
The 2 sprites raised their skirts, and Shanaeah gently patted them both on their shapely little sprite asses. She would have loved to forego the upcoming ritual and devote more attention to the two sweet little sprites' rear ends, but perhaps that was something she might look into later.
Mother, the imps. What part do they play? I thought I was to be alone.
You shall see in good time, darling. And since imps are semi-sentient, you are, for all intent and purposes, alone. Go now, sweet daughter, become what you shall become.
Danine and Renata both wrapped Shanaeah in a tight embrace, then turned and left her alone in the clearing, retreating into the woods, leaving her alone with Tay-Tay. Shanaeah walked to a spot equal distance between the fire and the creek, and lay down flat of her back as her mother had instructed. She opened the robe, exposing her naked body to the bright summer moonlight. She began to recite the mantra her mother had taught her.
Commune authoritatem potentialis inhabitatum Shanaeah. Commune authoritatem potentialis inhabitatum Shanaeah. Commune authoritatem potentialis inhabitatum Shanaeah.
She repeated the mantra over and over in a semi-chant. As she repeated the chant, the wind slowly began to increase. Soon it had the treetops swaying to and fro. As the velocity of the wind grew, Shanaeah could see that a funnel had formed over the wide part of the creek, and a water spout was developing. As the spout became saturated with the clear water from Spider Silk Creek, the funnel began to move towards her. It soon encompassed her within. She had become the epicenter of the small, water-laden cyclone. As she stared into the swirling funnel, embers from the fire began to be drawn into the mini tornado's swirling outer perimeter. Odd. The water did not extinguish the fire, and the fire did not dry up the water. Soon dust from the ground began to be pulled into the tiny twister as well. It did not contaminate the water to create mud, nor did it extinguish the fire. Shanaeah could smell the earth, taste the water, see the fire and feel its heat, and hear the wind as it whirled around her. The elements had stimulated all of her senses, save the sixth. At this point, all four elements, earth, wind, fire, and water, were bonded together, creating a swirling circular wall which surrounded Shanaeah. Bonded together, yet none contaminated or nullified the effect of any of the other three. It was at this point she noticed the tree imps. About 100 of them were hovering above the rim of the twister. Their wooden staffs pointed down at the rim of the cyclone, their left hands raised toward the full moon, palms open. A halo of multicolored light began to form around the outstretched hand of each of the imps. The halos grew brighter and more magnificent with each passing second, until she couldn't see the imps anymore, save their wands, which were still pointed at the twister's rim. Then suddenly beams of pure white light shot from the ends of the imps' wands and touched the outer perimeter of the tornado as it continued to swirl like a dervish. As the water in the twister reflected the light from the imps' wands, a prismatic effect was generated. Colors which Shanaeah never knew existed now encircled her, all contained within the twister's outer wall. She now understood the importance of the tree imps. They were channels. Then something strange and unexpected happened. Something her mother and aunt could not have predicted. Without reciting the mantra necessary to invoke Splendetta, she was suddenly thrust into the semi-conscious state of intellectual euphoria. At first, the idea of lapsing into a purely Manista state of consciousness while engrossed in a purely Genarian sprite ritual frightened Shanaeah. After all, Manista and sprite belief systems were about as opposite could be. She feared the Manista in her would war with the maid she was engulfed in and nullify the effects of her commune. Yet that isn't what happened. As she lay motionless on the ground surrounded by the prismatic elemental tornado, Splendetta began to work upon her mind at a pace so furious, she wondered how there was enough mental capacity remaining to even tell her body to continue to breathe. Every experience that she could remember, from her earliest childhood recollections up to what happened just minutes ago, was being analyzed, and the data collected was being reformatted, and then once again stored away in her brain. For want of a better way to express what was happening, Splendetta was consolidating the information contained in her memory banks into an entirely new filing system. Things which before had seemed unrelated to Shanaeah were now being revealed as having profound effect on other occurrences she had experienced. Answers to many of the whys she had carried for decades were becoming apparent to her, and understanding of concepts she had never really contemplated was presenting itself, as well as solutions to concepts she had contemplated but had yet to comprehend. Then what she had feared began to transpire. The Manista portion of her genealogy, under the heightened mental awareness of Splendetta, began to examine her mage. Any second now, Shanaeah expected the Manista and the mage to begin to war with each other, thus breaking the ritualistic bond between her and the elements, ending her communion. But again, that, however, is not what happened. Instead, the Manista and the mage embraced. Suddenly all her senses were heightened yet another notch. The taste of the water, the scent of the earth, the sound and touch of the wind, and the heat of the fire all increased to an overwhelming level. Yet it was not frightening or painful. It was a comfort. As her inner Manista examined and questioned her inner mage, and applied that profound Manista logic and understanding to the intricacies therein, understanding of the workings of magic that no sprite, witch, gnome, elf, or imp remotely possessed, flooded her spirit and brain, being filed away in the new system Splendetta had created within her memory banks. She now knew precisely why any given spell worked, how the verbiage invoked the spell and gave it continuity, how altering the accents on the syllables of any given spell can alter the effect, what elements were involved with a particular spell and why, how spells could be altered by invoking a different or additional element. Literally thousands of pieces of such knowledge flooded her mind, yet were all being efficiently stored in the files of her memory for later recall. And the last, and perhaps one of the most important pieces of information she became aware of, was how new spells can be conceived once the proper verbiage is assembled and the proper element or elements to work the spell are summoned. As all these new pieces of knowledge were being filed away in her memory, Splendetta began to fade. As Splendetta slowly and gently released her from its grasp upon her mind, she began to levitate. The robe she had been dressed in fell from her, and her naked body rose toward the top of the still whirling tornado. Once she had climbed to a point just above the top of the twister, her ascension ceased, and she hovered about 5 feet above it. She could see the imps were still channeling the blinding beams of light into the small cyclone. She felt what seemed like a pair of huge hands softly encircle her knees and gently spread her legs, exposing her lower abdomen fully. The imps then pointed their wands at Shanaeah's tummy. As they did, the beams of light redirected accordingly. A burning sensation engulfed Shanaeah's abdomen. The sensation steadily increased in intensity until it was at a level most would consider unbearable. Yet Shanaeah never even winced. She was experiencing the pain, but although it was very intense, she was able to control how she reacted to it. After several minutes, the tree imps lowered their wands as the beams of light faded. Shanaeah gradually descended until she lay upon the robe which had fallen from her as she rose. The cyclone began to lose its potency and eventually dissipated altogether. The imps all landed and sat in a wide circle surrounding her. Silence now engulfed her. Silence which, in the absence of the small tornado, seemed almost maddening. No insect chirped. No animal moved through the brush surrounding the clearing. It appeared even the creek ceased to flow and was quiet. After Shanaeah had adjusted to the absence of sonic stimulation, a sense of peace and well-being engulfed her and wrapped itself lovingly around her. The intense burning sensation on her abdomen was still present, but had subsided significantly, to the point it was no longer a concern. Even the fear of what damage may have occurred while the intense light burned her was of no concern to her at the moment. She was simply enjoying the feel of the ground beneath her and the cool early summer night air. After the intense forced feast her senses had just endured, the stillness she was now experiencing, though disturbing at first, was now quite pleasant. Yet her general awareness of the elements had been heightened immensely by the ritual. She couldn't hear the wind any longer, but could sense its power as it blew elsewhere, and could almost see the moment of its return. She could no longer taste the water, but she could feel its power as it moved earth and slowly wore down mountains. She couldn't smell the earth any longer, but as she lay upon it, she could sense the power contained within, and feel the force of the lives of those who trod upon it. She couldn't feel the heat of the fire, but its flame burned deep within her heart, and its light coursed through her veins. She had indeed become one with the elements. Even her sixth sense, which showed up in the form of Splendetta, was now also attuned to the power of the elements. Then at her feet a light began to grow. As it took shape, she recognized it as the oracle which had appeared to her during Splendetta before the meeting. As it grew to a towering height, it began to speak.
Shanaeah, take this crystal unto yourself and part with it not. It is of black obsidian. It is derived from the very elements from which your powers as the Foretold originate. It shall protect you in your quest from numerous negatives which you will encounter as you strive to keep Aeros free. It repels negative emotions which emanate from those you oppose and eliminates their ability to drain your spirit. It promotes self-growth through honest assessment of yourself. And it repels foul sorcery and curses of ill fortune. Place it around your neck and never remove it. It holds a charm which will prevent anyone but yourself from taking it from you.
The oracle then slowly dissipated, and where it had stood lay a small, black, pyramid-shaped crystal with a silver chain attached. She sat up, took the crystal, hung it around her lovely neck, and then collapsed back onto the ground. She lay there for over an hour, absorbing the gifts the elements were silently bestowing upon her. And slowly an itch developed. It started in her back where her wings attached just medial of her shoulder blades. But it was deep, as if her bones themselves itched. It began to spread until it encompassed her entire body. Gradually, the itch became a burning sensation, which slowly intensified. Shanaeah did not react. She endured in silence, controlling her reaction. The burning became a deep throbbing, centered in the very marrow of her bones. It continued to intensify until even with her newfound resistance, it became unbearable. And then, when she felt she could endure no more, Shanaeah screamed and passed from consciousness.